Hi, folks. My name is Irene Gallion. I'm a senior planner here at Juneau's Community Development Department. Here to talk to you today about rezone of approximately 9.5 acres in the Aak'w Kwaan district. For those of you who might not be familiar, in this particular situation, that's the Whittier and Willoughby areas. When you look at the paperwork associated with this one, it's kind of a lot. I think it definitely benefits from a walkthrough, especially since we have some new commissioners. Welcome. And this will probably go to a couple of committees. So if you hold on just a minute, I'll share my screen and we can start the walkthrough. All right, and let's just start with a reminder on what zoning is. When you rezone property, you're changing the rules under which you can develop it. And this will impact things like lot size, building size, where the building can be located on the lot, and what kinds of uses you can have on that lot. The purpose of zoning is to separate incompatible uses and to preserve property value. If you're a single-family homeowner, you don't want an asphalt plant nearby, and an asphalt plant owner does not want to listen to the neighbors complaining. Both legitimate uses, we just want to make sure they're in the right spots. And we've had zoning in Juneau since about 1969. Every lot in Juneau has a zoning district, and the name of the district gives you an idea of what they're trying to accomplish with that district. Names like residential, commercial, or industrial. In this case, the two districts we're talking about are mixed use, or MU, and mixed use 2, MU2. Very close. We'll talk about the differences in a minute. But what brought this up is the Central Council of Tlingit and Haida Tribes of Alaska, or Central Council, proposed to us a rezone of their property in the Aak'w Kwaan district. You saw it fly in there with the pink outline. And when we looked at that, we thought, nice idea. We're having a westward expansion of mixed use. What does that do for Central Council? Under existing zoning, when they build a building, it has to have a 5-foot setback from the property line. Under the proposed zoning, they can build it right up to the property line. The advantage of this in urban development is that you can have what's called pedestrian scale development. People on the street can look into the buildings, and likewise, just makes it a little bit more intimate experience. Lot coverage under current zoning is 80%. That's anything with a roof. Under the proposed zoning, there's no limit. The height limit under current zoning is 45 feet. Under the proposed zoning of MU, there's no limit with a caveat in plans, and we'll be talking about that in a little bit. And then finally, density. Under current zoning, they can have 80 units per acre, and under the proposed zoning, they can have no limit. So a little bit more flexible zoning to look at some different things to do with their land. And we looked at this and we thought, good idea. We'd like you to expand it to the west. And you'll see this purple box flying in here. And the reason we did that, we wanted to expand it over to Capitol Avenue. We didn't want a rezone line going between two lots where you had one lot on one side that had one standard for development and then lot right next to it having a different standard. So we thought that would make nice cohesive development. Another area that might benefit from this westward expansion is the area to the south of what Central Council has proposed. Coming in here with the yellow, that is mostly CBJ land, and it includes Centennial Hall, Juneau Arts and Humanities. It also includes Zach Gordon Youth Center and the proposed location for a new city hall. There's a lot politically going on with this area. So that yellow outline has been submitted by CBJ as a separate application, because if there is some political hangup, we do not want that to impact what Central Council is able to do with their proposed rezone. Another thing to consider with the CBJ proposal, you'll see a red circle flying in from the lower right. That area you might know as the 4-Point Sheraton right now. And if we don't rezone that, it ends up just being an island of MU2 and a sea of MU. So we're proposing that the CBJ proposal is expanded to include that. And when the Planning Commission looks at rezoning property, they don't just go willy-nilly. They look at what the comprehensive plan recommends. The comprehensive plan went through a very extensive public process, and this is how Juneau's residents proposed that we develop our community. And in there, they've got a term called land use designation. Well, what's the difference between a land use designation and zoning? The land use designation is the aspirational language. Zoning is the nitty-gritty on how it gets done. So the commission's going to be looking at land use designation also, and in this case, this area is in the traditional town center. What the aspirational language for this area includes a mixed-use high-density residential and commercial development, which both the existing zoning and the proposed zoning provide, and also a density of 18 or more units per acre. Again, both the existing zoning and the proposed zoning would provide that. This area is also part of what's called the Capitol Complex. You can see that in the gray highlight. And basically that is intended to support legislative activities. Office space, pedestrian-friendly circulation, meals and entertainment. So if you're in a long committee meeting, you can dip out and get your dinner, that sort of thing. Earlier, I talked about height in the proposed zoning district not having a limit, but there was a caveat, and this is the caveat. The Willoughby District Land Use Plan, Chapter 5, has been incorporated by reference into the comprehensive plan. At this, they're going to treat that chapter the same as they do the rest of the comprehensive plan. And in that chapter, they have this map with proposed height limits. As you can see here in the green, there's a 50-foot proposed height limit. And in the blue to the west is a 65-foot proposed height limit. Note that under current zoning, the height limit is 45 feet. We'll never get up to 50 or 65 feet under current zoning. The purposes for these height restrictions in this plan is to protect the view from Calhoun and Diston, and also to make sure that the residences along Village Street aren't plunged into like this urban valley. So we can see how Central Council's proposals juxtaposed on that. You see most of their limitation there is in the 50-foot green area. So how would this work? If the rezoning passed and somebody came forward with a building proposal to the Planning Commission, they could either say to the Planning Commission, I propose a building that is 50 feet high. Or they could come to the commission and say, I'm proposing a building that's over 50 feet, but here's the mitigations I'm providing to make sure we still have the view shed from Calhoun and from Diston, and to make sure that the village doesn't become a dark valley. So that is how that would work in practicality when it came before the Planning Commission. Some other features of the Willoughby District Land Use Plan is the idea of build to line. And that's that zero setback that we talked about that allows people to like look in windows, just feel a little bit more of their environment. Also, it facilitates canopies being built over walkways. It just makes it a better pedestrian experience. These other items are things to be aware of when buildings start being built. They're going to be looking for a 2-story minimum height, orientation towards the street, ground floor retail with offices and residences above, and interesting facades. And you can think about this as South Franklin, but modern. Other things they're going to look at is putting parking at the rear or side of the building, hiding trash receptacles and utility boxes, and making sure we have connected streets. So that's all about the physical dimensional standards of what can be done in mixed use versus mixed use 2. There are 2 uses that vary between the existing MU2 zoning and the proposed MU zoning. One is marijuana product manufacturing. It is not allowed under current zoning. It would be allowed under proposed zoning if you got a conditional use permit, which means somebody would have to apply, they'd have to come and make their case to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission would have to agree that that use made sense where they were proposing it. My personal opinion on this is that downtown property is very expensive. You don't need a lot of foot traffic for manufacture. So I suspect more cost effectively done in areas outside of downtown Juneau. I would be surprised to see this one come up. The other use that we have that differs between the 2 zoning districts is zoos, aquaria, or wild animal rehabilitation facilities. We could currently have that under current zoning with a conditional use permit. Under proposed zoning, it would not be allowed. Again, for the same reasons as marijuana product manufacturer, I think there's more efficient, more cost-effective places to do this outside of downtown. There has been basically an ocean aquarium education facility proposed down on the docks area, maybe the subport. And that area is outside of this proposed rezone, so would not be impacted by this rezone. So you might have the question, what are the applicants going to do with the property? And it is not something that community development or the planning commission consider, because we don't know, we can't require one kind of development. So for instance, let's say Central Council came to us and said, we're going to build 102 apartment building or 102 apartments, and we're going to have office space, and we're going to have an auditorium. And the commission was like, that's great, approved. And then after approval, Central Council went and sold that land, legal and appropriate. But the commission wouldn't have any relationship that would make the new landowner follow through with the plans that Central Council had proposed. So instead, what the commission does when they look at these is they look at all the possible land uses that could go into a rezone and determine whether or not those were appropriate for that area. And our planning commission is going to be looking at this on February 14th, 2023 at 7:00 p.m. in Assembly Chambers. We're going to have a staff report posted on February 6th, 2023. And at the end of this video, I'll show you how to get there. The Planning Commission is going to either recommend approval with conditions, and on a rezone, conditions can only be health and safety related. They could deny it, or they could continue it, which means they'd say, we need more information. Staff, please go get that information and come back to us at our next meeting. The Planning Commission is not the last decision maker in this. They are making a recommendation to the Assembly. The Assembly will then probably refer this to a couple of committees, probably Lands, Housing, and Economic Development, and probably Systemic Racism Review Committee, maybe some others. And those committees will give their feedback back to the Assembly, at which point the Assembly will take action. And that's the summary. Thank you for your time. If this was helpful, smash that like button. If you need help figuring out how to get to Assembly and Planning Commission packets, stay tuned. If not, you can jump off now. All right, folks, there's a lot of ways to get to this information. I'm just going to show you one that I use. Here we are at CBJ's homepage, and you see along the top here, there's these little buttons here. One of them says Assembly, and you can drop down to Minutes and Agendas, and it takes you to this page. And you want to click on this MuniCode button right here. They're the private company that hosts our materials. And it brings you to this page. You see along the left-hand side, you see the dates of the different meetings. For instance, you can see right here, 12/14/2023, we're going to have a Planning Commission meeting. The materials haven't been posted yet. So I'm going to pick one of the earlier meetings to give you an example. Let's look at the regular Assembly meeting on the 30th. So here, these first two buttons here are the agenda. The second two buttons are the agenda with the backup materials that the Assembly or the Commission are going to get. So this one's just going to tell you the order of events. This one on the right is going to give you the backup materials. The one that has the Adobe symbol there, that's just like, it's an electronic version of a binder. So you click that and you're just going to be flipping through the pages. This black one here with the HTML is going to take you to a place where you have links to the supporting documentation. So if you were interested in looking at it, you'd be able to click on it and it would bring up the backup information. So one more thing to let you know is at the top of this agenda, you have the Zoom information. So you can paste this link into your browser, or you can go to Zoom on your own, perhaps on your phone, and type in this webinar ID to participate. Thanks, folks, for your time, and I'll see you at the meeting.